Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third and final day of the EsportsU Coaches and Directors Summit 2023. Any of you brought to you, presented by U.S. Army and Army ROTC. Thank you very much to our sponsors. If any of you had a chance to join yesterday and watch the intro by Doc Haskell, that is a very hard act to follow. But Doc has deemed this as a pivotal moment in everyone's life of which we will benchmark new changes. So very hard to top that, but we have a very exciting panels lined up for you today. The first is a recruitment panel with Brian Hummel from Fisher College, Lucas Hayworth from Oklahoma Christian University, and Christopher Bilski from Michigan State University. And then second up is a community panel with Chase Newcomb from St. Cloud State University, Jackie Lamb, and Cora Kennedy from Illinois Wesleyan University. Jackie is from Minnesota State University. So very excited to welcome these panelists. And for those of you that got to hear the secrets yesterday from Doc, I will outdo that today by posting in the Discord later today 3 secrets about Doc Haskell that none of you know, as well as 3 secrets about Brian Hummel that none of you know. So tune in later for that and join our Discord after the end of the panels today. And we appreciate you all tuning in to learn from all these important stakeholders in the collegiate esports space. Thank you. And Tony Ann, I'll pass it over to you now.
Thank you, Angela, for the nice introduction, and I can't wait to hear the little secrets of Brian and Doc. But I would like to welcome everyone to our third day of our EsportsU Coaches and Director Summit. And joining me today is Brian Hummel, Lucas Hayworth, and Chris Bilski. We're going to be talking about recruitment. And Brian, if you want to start, just introduce yourself and a little bit about you, and then we'll go on to Lucas and Chris.
Hi, I'm Brian Hummel, the Director of Esports at Fisher College. We're located in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm also an instructor for esports classes at Emerson College.
Hey everyone, I'm Lucas Hayworth. I'm the Director of Esports at OC Esports or Oklahoma Christian University.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Bilski. I'm the Director of Esports at Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan.
And thank you all for joining us today and taking the time to discuss about recruitment. So I'll just start with Brian. Before we get to secret sharing, can you tell everyone the difference in scholarships that you offer, if it's full-time, partials, and how does this work for each of you?
Yeah, sure. We have various different scholarships, and it kind of goes game by game. So with our publisher-sponsored titles like League of Legends and Rocket League and Valorant, we're able to give full tuition scholarships out, housing grants, things along that nature. And then for the ones that are non-publisher sponsored titles, which you can never really guarantee 4 years of competition out, we'll go upwards of 75% off of tuition on those, and it'll trickle down. And yeah, that's really how we do it. It's based off of previous academics, their in-game accolades, and various other factors of if we need that role going. So.
And Lucas?
Yeah, so I'm just going to answer a couple of the questions here on the base by base. We have about 95 students in the program right now, and 80 of them are on scholarship. So to kind of give more context, for the first year when I started this program back in December of 2019, I was a student. I just graduated my undergrad, got hired on as a GA, building out this program from the ground up with nothing existing. So it was me and 3 Rocket League people that I found. We ended that first year at 16 students, and then I started recruiting, and we went up to 34. Then year 3 we're at 66, and now we're at 95 in year 4. So we've been growing pretty consistently over the years. We started with just one team, and now we have 14 different titles. And how the scholarships work, they're definitely on a case-by-case basis. We have average numbers that we work with all the different titles, but I'm mostly scholarship defined based on their potential, their defined skill set, and their determination. to place them at a good level that's most beneficial for where they're at.
And Chris?
Yeah, similar to kind of what Lucas said, our scholarships are a little bit on a case by case basis. So, it can be more or less depending on the student that we're working with. I will say that we're blessed in that, just with some of the people on the panels here, it feels like our programs have a significant amount of resources. And I know that's not true for all the programs out there. I'm working at Michigan State now, but before that, I was at a D2 school, D3 school, and an NAIA school where we had significantly less resources, right? So, a lot of programs are dealing with either no scholarships or small scholarships, but currently at Michigan State, partial up to full, depending on the potential of the student.
And Chris, how many students are in the program now and how many are on scholarship? Do you remember what year one was like and how much you grew?
Yeah, so this is really year one for us. So Michigan State for a long time has just had a club program. Me being hired at Michigan State was really the university taking the next step to support esports. So we're launching 3 different varsity titles: Rocket League, Valorant, and Smash, and we'll have roughly 25 students total for those titles. We're providing scholarships not only for our incoming recruits, but we're also providing walk-on scholarships as well for the students that have already been at Michigan State.
And Brian, I know at Fisher it's year 2. Has any numbers have changed since last year?
Yeah, so I actually started at Fisher July of last year, and we had 102 students in the program for this whole year, and then we're at 223 coming into this fall, so we're looking pretty good. Um, like 14 different games, just like Lucas. We're in pretty much every game that you can get into. So, and as far as that, we have 32 students on full tuition scholarships, and then the rest are, partial scholarships and things like that.
And Lucas, what has been
Yeah.
most effective for you in recruiting students?
Yeah, this is gonna be a long one. So you need a little bit of context first, in order to kind of understand my recruiting style, what I do, all that stuff. And most of it is just about the college itself. So for us being Oklahoma Christian University, we're in NCAA D2. We're a full on-campus, in-person institution. We have a couple of hybrid classes, a couple of adult and learning college courses, but most of them, especially being in athletics, you have to live on campus or within a 50-mile radius to even participate in the program. So we have a very traditional academic and athletic experience, where house under athletics is a club sport. And so I'm able to pull athletic level scholarships, just like our basketball, our futsal, our swim, etc. And we're really able to kind of pinpoint those most effective ways by already looking at what athletics does for their traditional sports and just kind of tying it into esports. So having a high value add campus, we're like one of the top locations in Oklahoma, I think the top right now rated wise. We have very high level academic programs. We have a very high graduation rate. Um, we pass the national average in terms of pretty much every single one of our stats, especially for privates, non-for-profit 4-year universities. We're very, very high up there just as a school itself. So recruiting really takes, just having a good stat line really takes the weight off of recruiting for me, because I know that the school itself can kind of sell itself. And everything that I do as a director for esports really is just an added value benefit to the students that I bring on. So I really have been building this from year one based off of my 3, 5, and 10-year vision. And I've been able to execute very well on all of those. And I've been able to follow up with all of those different points. And I can go into that later, but it's not really pertinent right now. But for recruiting, the main ways is that I really target students that would never even consider coming to a private 4-year Christian college. Almost all of my students, over 90 that I've recruited over the 4 years, are non-traditional, non-secular. They're very different. They themselves are a very different student body from the rest of the students that attend OC. And so it's been super effective for me to kind of create our own culture, create our own incentives, create our own value in my program, and not fully isolate ourselves, but set ourselves as a higher and new standard compared to the rest of campus. And so there's different methods that we also use to recruit. Discord, obviously, by far is the easiest way to get in contact with most students. Every game has its own unique culture, as Brian definitely knows. And so being able to kind of be tapped into all 14 to maybe it's realistically more like 16 different titles and know their culture, know the bubble scene, know the amateur scene, understand the pathway to amateur and pro, and be able to target competitive students at those levels is, for me, that's been super effective. And I know it's been effective for both Brian and a few others as well. So kind of speaking to the crowd here, but Discord, online services, all that stuff is definitely the most effective way. There are other slightly effective ways, like different college fairs and recruiting, being able to go and talk with high schools, that kind of stuff. And every school is going to have their own independent and different niche. The main thing is understanding what your target audience is. If your school is giving you a quota to recruit X number of students, you want to make sure that you're not double tapping into the same recruiting pool that admissions already taps into. You want to develop a unique pipeline. You want to develop a unique pathway that you can then go and show to the students, go to show to the administration actually, that my students are big value add and they are non-traditional. They would not have considered to come here if not for esports, and then that can help sell your program even further and get you more support, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you, Lucas. And it's kind of interesting how you touched upon being a private school. So, Chris, being a public school, what has been most effective for you?
Yeah, I think that like for any program, you want to lean into your strengths, right? And so for Michigan State University, our strengths is our academics. You know, we're a top 10 ranked university when it comes to communication arts, like in the world. We got the number one ranked game development program for a public university in the country, right? Like we have really, really strong academic programs that are around making games, or when it goes into the creation of games. And so for me, if that's my strength, that's something that I'm going to lean into, right? There might be for other programs, they may have different strengths. And so leaning into those, finding out what your niche is, what works best for you, and working within that. And so for us, understanding that that's our strength, and even the fact that I'm kind of housed under an academic college here at Michigan State University, I'm really looking for students who value those same things, right? I'm looking for students who are looking for a quality education, right? They look at esports as an opportunity for the next 4 years to set them up for success for the next 40 years. And so, like example, our incoming recruits this year, I think our average GPA is over a 4.0, which just tells you kind of the profile of students that we're looking for, and the profile of students who are interested in our type of programs. Really excited about what we have building here at Michigan State. Like I said, this is the first year for us, so we're just launching the program. But yeah, talking about how do you connect with different people, just as Lucas said, there's a variety of different ways, whether it's Discord, social media, going out to local events, whether that's high school competitions, whatever that might be, or on the flip side, inviting people to your own space, right? Inviting local high schools, trying to have events and competitions at your space as well.
Thank you, Chris. And Brian, can you share a bit of how Fisher recruits and how it structures itself to best recruit? And what are some of your best practices?
Sure, absolutely. So at Fisher, we're in a unique position, and I think Lucas actually hit a lot of this, straight on point. But what we do that differs from others is we try to meet students in the middle of where they want to be. So, for us, we offer online programs, in-person programs, a hybrid. They could be an online student, live in Boston, the whole 9 yards. And similar to Lucas, what we're doing is we're bringing in students that probably didn't have college on their radar. They weren't thinking that college was an option. They might not have been able to afford it. And then using their skills in gaming, we're able to provide them those opportunities. And, something that's a little bit different about us, I know schools like Maryville and stuff are like this, but we're housed under the president's office. So, as far as oversight and whatnot, I get to report directly to him. So, it makes it a little bit easier when I need to get things done. So, if we're doing fundraising or we need to up a student scholarship or, meet somebody in the middle, it's very easy to just go directly to the top and, get what we need. And as far as like how we recruit, Discord's a big way. Understanding that amateur ecosystem, a lot like Lucas was saying. Um, the big thing that we just did is we hired a new person who's actually being announced tomorrow, who will be directly involved in incubating the Scholastic Esports ecosystem in New England. So we hope that can create a pipeline of students, um, that we don't typically get. I only have 3 students in our program that are from Massachusetts. The rest are from around the world and the country. So what we really want to tap into is our local market, and I believe that that's one of the best solutions is actually getting high schools on board. But it's Discord DMs at 1 in the morning. It's Twitter. I mean, shoot, sometimes I'll even have to do an Instagram DM because that's the only way an international student's going to reach out to me. So, there's a lot of ways to do it. And best practices is really just being honest. I never offer somebody a scholarship until they're accepted to the school. I'll say, like, hey, this is something we'd like to offer you, if you fit all the criteria. And, just being honest with them through the process. And, if they have questions about, other schools, just talking about the goods of everybody, what everybody has to offer. And, try not to really ever put anyone else down because, maybe they end up at the other program and then you're competing against them. So, just keeping it positive and upfront and honest.
And Chris, what practices do you or your program employ to find those top tier players?
Yeah, so like Brian said, Brian said that he just has a few students from Massachusetts. Kind of conversely, we have a lot of students from Michigan just based on kind of the history and the nature of our university, right? We're Michigan State University. We were founded as a university primarily to serve Michiganders. And so a lot of my recruiting is actually done within the state itself. Whether that's Michigan high schools that currently have programs or ones that don't, trying to find local Michigan talent that can help support our programs here, as well as reaching out to a few students that are outside of the Michigan borders. But yeah, I think like what Brian said was really important about building up local ecosystems. I think in the long term, as much as we as colleges and universities can help support local scholastic esports, whether that's within our state, within our city, within our region, that just helps everybody, right? Like the better the system is, the healthier the system is, the better for everyone. And so I think that that's a really important thing that we're focusing on here at Michigan State as well. How can we help Michigan high school esports grow and develop? And I think that's something that most colleges and universities should be looking at.
Yeah, and Lucas, when you're trying to find those top tier players, do you find it difficult, or it's pretty easy to recruit for being in a private institution? I know I used to go to a private institution as well, so some people have thoughts and comments on that, but I don't know if you've hit any roadblocks with that or if it's basically the same thing.
Definitely hit roadblocks. It's not perfect by any means. Us being a Christian university in a very non-secular space of gaming is also a very big challenge. But there's a way to tap into specific specificities based off of your perspective as a recruiter or as a leader of this space. So it's definitely doable. I mean, I've been able to prove it so far, and we're continuing to do so. We're continuing to improve our different programs every single year. I could pretty much say that I've directly had a hand in recruiting over 100 students to the esports program because of esports only at the school. And I can confidently say I have lost no more than 5 to other schools through their tenure of being here. So my turnover is extremely low for being a high level competitive program. We're not really cutthroat. I don't cut people off a scholarship. I don't cut teams, anything like that. Given that they show up and they do what they need to get done. So recruiting, though, and finding those talents has really kind of shifted. Early on, it was very much me spending 60 hours a week going online, researching the different leagues and different ecosystems, trying to break my way into Twitter DM groups, into Discord private message groups, and stuff like that, and doing it. But now that I'm kind of in there and I've gotten a legacy built up at OC with our competitive results and our history and all that stuff, now it's kind of become more word of mouth and more of them seeking us out. And so we can be a lot more picky with who we bring on and a lot more challenging and be able to vet the students a lot higher rather than just kind of bringing someone in and really having to like coach them and make sure that they're a good fit, all that stuff after bringing them in. I can do that good fit check now beforehand. Being in person is a massive benefit to this too. Like especially during the turnover side, because I can sit there and level with them as a real human being. I can sit there and talk to them face to face. I can level with them what's going on. I can take them to their students, or take the students to their professors or to student success or to the financial aid office or the registrar or anyone like that, and really get things done in a very quick, efficient, and real matter. And so having everything kind of be accessible in our 240-acre small campus here has been a blessing for what we need to do as a community and as a service. So recruiting is definitely a it's definitely not a one size fit all solution. There is no one size fits all solution. I've largely, like I said, tapped into a non-traditional out of state and international population. I know Brian definitely does this as well. We have 15 international students in my out of my 90 here, and my entire Rainbow Six Siege team, all 6 of them are from Brazil. So I've been able to find different pipelines from there. I have a new one that I'm building a connection with up in northern and central Europe, and so being able to kind of grow different international regions and provide them a quality high level education here, and then go back and either or stay here and build up their career in the long term is a high level of benefit. But it's all about finding out what your strengths are, whether they be the intangibles, the immutables, or the actual esports side of what you're able to offer, and really tuning into those value adds. That's how I see it.
Thank you. And Chris, I know you touched upon resources before, and I know there's probably not a lot of people out there that have resources or expertise as you three. Do you have any advice for directors in younger programs with different resources? So yeah, do you have any advice for anyone younger? I know you're starting up now from a club, but it's a nice perspective from starting up from a club. What has happened?
Yeah, I think that like when I first started on kind of this like collegiate esports journey and like trying to figure out how to do recruiting and things like that, I think it's really important to think about how you're using your time when it comes to recruiting and work on things that are going to be an efficient use of your time. Um, like for example, for me, when I was working in Southeast Ohio, I very heavily focused on trying to recruit students that were within like a 50 to 100-mile radius, right? And that was just because those students were more likely to be aware of my university, know where we were, and kind of you got that built-in name brand recognition that went with it, right? So when talking to those students, I found that my success rate with being able to attract those students to the university was significantly higher than when I kind of got out that radius. And it's very easy with recruiting and all the different sites and options and things like that to just sink an enormous amount of time into doing it. But as we know, with directors and kind of the current state with collegiate esports, recruiting is just one of your responsibilities for most people that are running their programs, right? Like there's helping to manage the teams, helping to coach, social media, all those other things that are going on. Um, so being efficient with your recruiting time, I think, is really important. And that once again goes to the thing that I think has been said a few times is that just trying to figure out what the strengths of your program are and playing to your strengths, right? Figuring out what separates you from other programs and making sure that you're highlighting those programs, because you want to not only find students that are a good fit for your program, but you want to find students that are a good fit for your university as well. I like that Lucas talked about retention rates. I think that that's really important with programs. If you're recruiting university first, esports second, regardless of how much playing time, little playing time, what's going on with your esports program, at the end of the day, they're going to be excited that they're at your university, right? Like even if I recruit somebody to my Rocket League team and they end up being on the second team versus the first team, if what got them excited about it was the fact that they were going to Michigan State, they're still going to be happy because they're going to Michigan State University. And that to me, like as somebody who's been a few different places, right? That's been really evident for me and how we do recruiting, and that even if I have left from place to place and somebody new has taken over, there hasn't been students that transfer out. They all stay there because they were excited to be at that university in the first place, right? Which I think is a really powerful thing. For us, we don't. I know Lucas and Brian have much larger programs than I do from the varsity side. Part of that is because for us it's not about enrollment. It's not really about a marketing thing. People know who Michigan State is. um, for us, it's really about student experience. So we have a smaller varsity program, but we have a really large club program. So like our club is like 1,000 to 1,500 students that participate in that program. And so we focus on a little bit different things with what we're trying to do with our current efforts and current resources, just kind of how we spread those around.
It's actually interesting that you touch upon recruiting for the university first. I'm a little interested, Brian, in your tactic of recruiting. Are you recruiting more for the program or for the university as a whole? Because I know Fisher College is probably not a large name out there, so I'm interested.
No, absolutely. That's a good question. I mean, obviously we're recruiting some students for university first, but our starting players on our rosters, I'm trying to get the best player possible that is able to get into school and is able to pass their classes. That's what I'm looking for my starting. I want to be the most competitive we can be. Outside of that, yeah, we're looking for higher academic standard students. If they're going to be coming here and playing on our JV or our club or managing teams, then we're definitely looking for that academically sound student. And that, we talk a lot about recruitment and just recruiting players, but, my school and many other schools, you don't just have to be a player. You can be a manager, a coach, a team lead, whatever, broadcasting and production. So, there's so many ways to get involved that isn't just playing. And you know I wanted to touch on a couple points because it was like advice to younger people getting into the space. Don't be scared to say what you need, because these programs are starting, not at a school like Michigan, but like a smaller school. They're starting because they want recruitment, they want enrollment. So put your money where your mouth is. Give them so many students and too many students in your pipeline that they can't say no to you at that point, right? I've never had an issue with resources and things like that. So because we're bringing in 100, 200 students at a school that has 1,200 students. So that's if we make up 15 to 25% of the school, how can somebody say no at that point? And then it just helps get more resources and things along the lines of that. But to finally answer your question, I look for both. I look for program students though in specific. So I've got a few that I'll shout out, like Jackson, for example. He's amazing. He's my head of broadcasting and production. He brought in a team of students this year himself that he wanted to work closely with to do all of our social media and broadcasting and production and casting and this and that. And having students take some type of ownership into this, um, really gets them involved. And I'm sure that maybe one day he'll have a job at the school, whether it's with me or admissions or something like that. So I try to get these skill sets out of them and give this as a playing field for them to use. So what other person is going to say, hey, go recruit your friends that you want to work with, and we'll get something going. So a lot of it is, that's how we operate here.
And I know directors are constantly getting solicited on paying for recruiting services. Lucas, how crucial are these services for the average program in 2023?
Really loaded but good question. So, paid recruiting services, it depends. I mean, the core question and answer is it depends. But there are so many factors that you need to think of from your own standpoint as a program, as an esports program in college. What your main goals are, what your target audience is, what your quota, quote unquote, is, your metrics for success, your KPIs. Knowing that first, then you can try to find a service that best fits you for recruiting if you can't just simply do it yourself. For the first 2 years as I was recruiting, I did it literally basically all myself. Everyone's, at least in this space, has probably at least heard of Stay Plugged In. We got on board with them really early on, and for the first literal year and a half, I had 0 students turn out from that. But then last year, as we built a legacy and I recruited and did everything on my back end myself, I got over 15, I think 15 or 16 students from that service, and so it vastly paid off for what it was. But um, it really just depends, and like there are so many different types of services as well besides just that one. There's elite commission based services that are just geared towards the students paying and then giving a commission based off of the scholarship that they get. I've heard of things like that. I work with 2 pipelines, one in Brazil, one North Central Europe, that are commission based off of the students as well, but for the family. And so it all really just depends on what services kind of best fit you and best fit what you want to do. But I really genuinely don't think that there's a service out there that is too expensive for what it's worth, at least from the mainstream ones that I've seen. But also, it's you don't really have to have a service to recruit and to build your own local pipeline. Most schools in esports that aren't playing like top 10 of their different games are really focused on the local side of things. Like Chris was definitely talking about that and focused on his local side of things. And so talking about and looking at your local pipelines and how you can kind of integrate yourself into esports into your existing local pipelines, and then creating a parallel pipeline that is dedicated for esports as a new value add is super important. But at the end of the day, you really have to make sure that your school and the university itself, all the core stats are good, and that you're talking about that to the students, talking about like your national and average acceptance rate, graduation rate, job placement rate for your degree, all that stuff, and making sure that you're fitting the student that needs to go there, that really would benefit from going to your university. So for us, we have like a 60% graduation rate, and the school itself has a 78% retention rate. But in my program, the value that I bring in for esports, I know that my esports retention rate is 92%, almost 15% extra. And then my graduation rate, well, we've only been here for 4 years, but everyone that's been recruited and has stayed on has graduated. So far is 100%. I know Brian was mentioning how big his esports program is compared to the college. Ours is somewhat similar. We have 1,600 undergrad and we have 90 in esports, roughly. And so we're like 5% of the total university undergraduate population. Like his is definitely much higher, not gonna lie. But the scale and the scope of it is definitely still there. So these services, they come and go. Just find what best fits for you. I personally think that you really shouldn't turn any of them down until you really understand what they're there for and what they are to serve you the best. If recruiting is your goal, of course.
And before we start to wrap up, I'm just gonna ask if Twitch viewers, if you have any questions, hop them up in the chat, and if we have time at the end, I could ask them. If not, that we will be having a 5 o'clock discussion in our Discord. So if nothing is answered here, we could definitely move that to Discord later. But with that being said, Brian, how can a program appeal to administration to create an environment for success when it comes to recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of answered it a little bit earlier, but the appeal, and I'll talk about small colleges only because in Christopher's case, it's always completely different at a big state school. But how can we appeal? It's find what the school is looking for. What do they want to fill in the gaps with? And if it's esports, then what type of student do they want? Do they want national exposure? Do they want 20 students in a program and call it a day and throw 10 computers in a lab? You really got to identify what it is that they want. So you know when it comes to recruiting, the successes, you know, I always say it this way: just get more leads than your admissions department can generate in a year on your own. And if you can do that, whether they convert or not, um, there's really not going to be many questions asked to you. And if you're sitting there and a school really wants recruitment and you got to hit these quotas and things like that, hit those quotas and succeed that. Like, don't recruit 10 students in a year and expect to get all this funding because you're only bringing in a couple $100,000. You can't do much with that. Bring in 100 students, it's a different story. Like for me, for example, we started in a room, or two classrooms. We had 30 computers between it with 68 on campus kids. The rest were online. It got a little bit tight, so then now we expand to 80 computers and it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio. And the next year moving forward, we're building out a 15,000 square foot facility. I'm kind of hinting at something. So you know things like that evolve from recruitment, retention, doing the right things, um, and really doing it for the student at the end of the day. So like, similar to Lucas and Chris, we don't lose many students. The only time we really lose a student is one, they can't afford it, or two, they get poached and get a better offer. And it's like, great, go enjoy your full ride to college. That's really the only time we're losing a student. So, you know, just get administration on board. And I actually heard Dan Clerky say it yesterday, like, don't be scared to raise hell in these meetings. Like, just do your thing, say what you need, get what you need, and do it for the students at the end of the day. So
And Chris, do you have any advice for the audience going into recruitment? Not even just for younger programs, but in general. Oh no, did we lose Chris?
Frozen
I guess
in a
Lucas, if you
beautiful
want
state, though.
to, Lucas, if you want to take it first.
You wanna repeat the question?
Yeah, yeah. I'm just asking if you have advice for the audience on recruitment or not.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna repeat kind of what I said. Is like
Hmm.
just know what your personal goals are. Know what the administration, your supervisors, all of them know what they expect out of you and out of your program, and be able to match and, like Brian said, definitely exceed that. So like Chris Postel's trend report every year comes out, and you see like what the national average growth is on each program, all that kind of stuff. And I think the last time it was like 14 different students, like 14 new additional students per esports program on a year-over-year basis. And then for at least for me and Brian especially, we're definitely way past that. And so being able to use that as an advantage and then cite that and be able to kind of go into a meeting with the confidence that you know your shit and you know what to do from a growth standpoint, which is really, really massive. At the end of the day, every university, even ours being a private not for profit, is a business at the end of the day. There's monetary costs involved, there's transactions involved, all that stuff. And recruiting is by far the most important part of the university from a business standpoint. So being able to know what you're doing and know that you're passing the national average, you're doing more than admissions office themselves could do. All of that stuff is amazing. I think that's really, really good advice. But also, again, know what your boundaries are. Like if your administration looks at the students you bring in, are like, oh, these are students that all live within 20 minutes of campus. They could have came here anyways. We were already on their radar. How is esports the value benefit from this? Being able to target some students outside of that, or being able to know how to position those recruits to say that these are esports specific and they would not have come to this university if not for esports. Knowing that kind of guardrail is very, very important to making sure that the university and your administration especially understand that this is a esports specific value add. So I would very, very much just kind of focus on that guardrail.
And we have Chris back with us. Chris, I'm
W.
gonna ask you the question I asked before. Do you have advice, last minute advice for everyone watching?
Yeah, I think what Brian said was really important, which is kind of understanding the why in your program, and that what is something that is up you and the people around, the people above you. Like I've been at a few different universities and colleges now, and each one had a reason for why they were creating their esports program. So understanding what the goals of your program are, what success looks like for you in your university, that allows you to create a game.
Thank you, Chris.
Dude, his books are just too strong, man. Those books are just blocking the internet. I swear to God.
It's all the books. It's okay, Chris. And before we wrap up, Brian, you actually had a question from the chat. Um, what is the biggest benefit of having a student worker / staff helping recruit and manage teams?
I mean, there's a lot of benefits to it. If I don't have to spend 15 hours a week managing game schedules and registrations and things like that, that's 15 more hours that I can go get funding or another student or get money for a land, things like that. I mean, students run the world. This all started from clubs, anyways. And, we're lucky enough that this became an industry. So, the value to it is, I can't even describe it. I wouldn't have been able to do what we did last year without like 5 specific students. I'll give them a shout out: Natalie, Parker, Jackson, Kevin, Will and Ian. So like those people, they really were the backbone to the program for the students. Managing day-to-day tasks. Well, I went out and grinded and did everything business related. So it's a true added value for sure.
And so I'm going to conclude here. Thank you all for joining us today and showing and sharing your experiences and what your recruitment tactics are and all your little secrets. Probably not a lot of them, but yeah. So everyone watching, please stay on for our next panel about community programming. And just a reminder, at 5:00 we are going to be moving to the Discord to have after panel discussions. If anyone has leftover questions, we will be hopping in there and wanting to hear from everyone. So thank you, Lucas, Brian, and Chris for joining me today.
Thank y'all.
Welcome, everyone, to the final panel in our Coaches and Directors Summit, Day 3. I hope you all have had a wonderful time listening to so many incredibly talented and knowledgeable experts in our space as they have shared their stories and their knowledge with all of us over the past few days. We have perhaps the best for last, talking about the core of what we do, community, and building programming around community to maximize our programs and our spaces and those around us. I am joined by three very wonderful people in alphabetical order. First name, will you please go around the horn and give a 30-second introduction for each of you?
First name, last name, or first name? I'll just
Just
go.
first
I'll
name.
just go.
Chase, you're first.
Hi, my name is Chase Newcomb. I'm the director of esports at St. Cloud State University, super involved in the collegiate space. Currently, as of 1 week from now, I will be stepping down, but I am the chair of the board of directors for NECC. I am the chair of the competition council for NACE. Grassroots-oriented professional. I do too much Discord DMs open if you need help with anything.
Thank you, Chase. Cora, you're up next.
Okay. Hi, I'm Cora Kennedy. I'm the Director of Esports at Illinois Wesleyan University. I also serve as a DEI Director for NECC, DEI Committee for Voice of Intercollegiate Esports. I do some freelance publications. I have a new one today, actually. And then I also am a freelance photographer.
Thank you so much, and we're so grateful to have you. Jackie, please introduce yourself to the world.
Hi, I'm Jackie Lamb. I'm the previous assistant director and head coach for Minnesota State University, and I am the new STEM and Esports TOSA, which is teacher on a special assignment, which people don't know, for the Minneapolis Public School District in Minnesota. I am a co-founder of Esports and Coffee, a mentor for Wiggy and QWE, as well as a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, that's me. Thanks.
Thank you all so much. Well, we're going to dive
So
right into our topics of discussion for today. And our topics are around community programming. And Jackie, I'm going to give the first question to you, my friend. Everyone knows that community, as we talk about it, is central to gaming and esports, especially on the scholastic campuses on which we work. So I want to ask you, what do you define is the community that esports on your campus serves and that you have served in all of your many roles? And how large is this community in reference to the total campus population?
I think that's a hard question to answer just for one university. I think when you're thinking about your university, you're going to think about a couple of things. You're going to think students, the faculty, the staff, and then the outside sources. So community members, people who aren't involved in necessarily the school but want to be, and then the high school students and middle school students, as long as your community. So considering all those factors, if you are a medium-sized university like mine was, our community would be our students who attend our online Twitch matches, who come to our facility to play in the facility and then support us. But then also outside factors for the community when we run Smash events. Smash is very big in Minnesota, and Chase will attest to that. But it's the outside factors too who come in to support you, and that's how you have your community and set it. So just figuring out what your gross population is and then putting them into different categories and then figuring out what they can do to help support your own program.
Thank you so much. And I agree with what you said. It's very hard to define that within just one particular bucket. So I'm actually going to ask both Chase and Cora, starting with you, Cora, if you could go ahead and answer that same question. How do you define the scope of community that esports on your campus serves, and how large is that community in reference to your overall campus population?
Yeah, so for us, I don't know much about your institution actually, Chase, but for us, we're a pretty small college. I have 1,600 students total on campus, and it's maybe a 5-minute walk end to end, which students still complain about somehow. But for us, our esports program is 45-ish players. I have students and staff involved, but besides that, we're pretty small on campus. We're actually now, the population I'm looking at different is because we're over half athletics on campus now. With our new incoming class, we're over half athletes. So I'm drawing from an 800 student population now instead of 1,600. And we also have casual gaming across campus. Athletes still get involved. And I also look at students who just want to be interested in gaming from the community. We bring in players from high school teams nearby and use our wonderful facility as a way for high school programs to get team workouts and see the campus. So for us, it's going as broad as I can while still fitting in the time constraints that I probably have to deal with.
I like that, going broad while fitting in as much as you're able to serve. Chase, please define community for yourself as a newly minted director at St. Cloud State University.
Yes, certainly. So, community here is very different than most other spaces I've been in, and I think the big benefit for me and the draw for St. Cloud State for me was the focus on community. I'm a very community-oriented professional. That's my main focus, and so when we were building out what we were wanting our program to look like, which we're in our first semester, officially full semester of our program, it was a matter of they came to me and said, "Well, what do you want to do?" Right? That is very rare in our space. Most coaches and directors are given a blueprint up front, and you have to fit your cookie cutter model to that, right? For us, it was a collaborative conversation, which I definitely appreciated. So when we were building out our model, community was first and foremost. We're really trying to send out a message of belonging to all of our students on campus. Our campus size is decreased since COVID, but still a bit larger than where I formerly was from. It's around 8,500 students currently on campus, and we put out a form. Just very basic, asking folks if they were interested in esports, any incoming freshmen and transfers. And actually, out of this freshman class, we got 900 responses on that form saying that there were 900 people interested in esports. So for us, community fits into a couple of different areas, right? Community, we have a Mitchell Hall community on campus, which is our esports themed living learning community. We have all of our clubs on campus, obviously, and those are sectioned out separately by game because they actually get more funding if it's individually by game. And then we have our out of those clubs, those smaller competitive teams that are being involved. Then we have our internship opportunities, career opportunities. So really, when we're looking at developing esports here at St. Cloud State, that first stop shop is community and getting involved somewhere and finding that sense of belonging. So this year, I mean, any other year I've been involved with collegiate esports, it's just been competition and growing the community from competition. Whereas here it's vice versa. We're growing communities first. So rather than starting, we only have two competitive teams right now, uh, Smash Brothers and Rocket League, rather than starting a bunch of teams arbitrarily and recruiting specifically for those games, like Valorant, Overwatch, etc. We're actually looking at our community first. And so we have a coalition, and the coalition is all of our separate community groups coming together. And the game specific clubs at the end of every year, our coalition will vote on the club that has had the most engagement, and we'll have a panel sorting through those votes of professionals here on campus, and we'll promote one club every year to varsity over the next 4 years. So it really is community first, and as you're engaged with your community, growing your community, from there it scales. So our model, I went a little bit into the weeds, but our model is really different than a lot of other schools, and it's because I wanted to come in and really center what we're doing around the community here at St. Cloud State.
That's amazing. I love hearing all
Yeah.
of those different responses and hearing how each of you are thinking about this, not just from your program perspective, but also just from your own personal professional views. Chase, I want to ask you to go a little bit more into detail because, as everyone here knows, data is showing that programs are increasingly reaching out to students off campus, and including high school, after school, youth involvement, and so many other avenues and facets into their programming. How does that look currently at your school with SCSU?
That's a great question. And it's very true. I mean, we are seeing multiple communities grow up in all of these college communities and collegiate. So for us, it's a matter of our internal community, who we have on campus, who is already students at St. Cloud State, and then our external community that's local, being the St. Cloud area community, who is involved from there. So that could be our locals. Jackie was talking about how the Minnesota Smash Brothers scene is thriving, and it certainly is. It's a big scene, so that could be our local Smash Brothers groups. That could be our Visitors Bureau, working with them to engage the local community. And then there's the regional community, right? So that would be central Minnesota for us. And so our strategy to attack, I guess attack's not the right word, our strategy to engage each of those areas is really to create some really meaningful opportunities on campus when it comes to events and the spaces on campus. We just bought 20 brand new PCs, 4080 i9 processors, and they're available for
Damn.
anyone at
Damn, okay. You got nicer stuff than me now.
It's kind of insane. They just bought 20 of them, and we already had 10 3080 i7 processor PCs. And I won't be revealing the brands because we're not sponsored yet. So we have 30 PCs on campus now, and that's available for students anywhere on campus to engage. We have a lounge that has 12 of them, and then our esports arena has 18. And so tackling our area community, really the local and then our internal community, is really creating those opportunities in terms of event planning to bring them in. And so for us, it's a very interesting dynamic because it's so new, right? So I noticed very early on that this was going to take up a lot of time and need a lot of resources for. So I went back to our administration here. I explained sort of the position that I felt that I was in, and we actually hired a brand new person. Actually, they're not hired, they're on scholarship. We brought in Cameron McCall out of Kansas City. He goes by Campaign. He's on the PR in Kansas for Super Smash Brothers, very involved in that scene, and he's going to come on a full ride scholarship actually to St. Cloud State. He started yesterday, and he's going to be engaging our community as our community manager to both grow the external community in St. Cloud and to grow our clubs and coalition on campus.
Can I just jump in really quick too? I'm so
Please
sorry.
go for it.
Yeah, please.
I just want to state too. Off one of the other topics is the staff and the faculty that student workers are. We dedicated a lot to aligning ourselves with other departments, like the theater department, and that way I was able to send job openings or questions to them, and they would send it to their whole list instead of me sending it to a million students or other people. But that's how we were able to get our extra students who weren't necessarily on campus. The online students was through student workers who had spouses or brothers or sisters that they were able to pass it on to. So really collaborate with your other programs to be able to use their directories as much as possible.
And that sort of cross-campus
Absolutely.
partnership lets you also find other folks you can work with on campus. You wouldn't even know. No, first of all, like I'm working with our makerspace people now to just do random, like, we have coasters lying around now that I borrowed for home and things like that. And we just getting makerspace folks or just anyone on campus, like theater departments love getting involved. PR people love getting involved. I'm working with marketing for ideas. So like get involved across campus. You'll find random departments who will just be your best friend all of a sudden and they'll do whatever you want them to do.
I'd love to summarize that in a very simple statement that's a takeaway statement for anyone listening, and that is grow your social capital, grow your leadership on campus,
Yes.
get other folks involved like Jackie and Cora are saying that believe in your mission of what you want to do with these sports. That's what Cora was just saying she did, I did with Campaign, what Jackie said she did. So I mean it makes sense. Just grow your footprint on campus and create meaningful experiences for people to want to be involved with.
Absolutely. Well said, all of you. I want to toss a question to Cora. What would you say is the biggest difference between deliberately programming something for your community and simply being present in that community?
So something I talk a lot about with my space on campus is our esports facility is on the edge of campus, which may sound bad. It's a 5-minute walk, but we're on the edge of campus. People don't see us much. People don't walk by us much. And a lot of times I say our space is open. You're free to come by. And nobody really does because we're out in the periphery. Only people who come by are people who are supposed to be there. And I don't get walk-ins. I don't get walkthroughs. And so to do programming purposefully for that, what we're doing this coming year actually is putting events up in our lobby, doing study times, using quiet space in our building just for that, or putting flyers around campus to say, hey, the space is open, come by this time and do a workshop or learn more about esports or that kind of thing, and being visible. being visible around campus helps you find programming you want to do, because I don't have all the ideas. I don't know everything that I want to do with the program, with the school year. What I do is I take it from students. We are working on a thing last year with the Greek life organizations who said, we want to run a tournament, let's go run it. And unfortunately it fell through due to scheduling conflicts, but those are the things where you talk to departments on campus and just talk to students. What do you want to do? And how can I help? And then do programming around that, because I hate making events where one person shows up and I'm kind of sitting there like, well, this is awkward. So it's a lot nicer when I have multiple folks there and I can actually have people around that. So just talk to students, see what they want to do, and match up that expectation with them.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Before we move on here, I want to just briefly say to those who are watching the stream right now, if you have any questions for any of these incredibly intelligent and seasoned veterans, please drop them into Twitch chat, and then we can address them as we move on to our Q&A focus at the end of the panel. So if you have any questions, drop them in the Twitch chat right now. I want to move on to Jackie. I want to talk about the school year first. So in context of our typical academic year, for you and what you've seen, what types of programs coming out of your esports program are most successful at engaging and impacting students?
I think Core hit on a lot of the basic things that you want to do. So MNSU has last year just under 16,000 students on campus, and the College of Nursing was one of the biggest colleges, and then the School of Business was a second. And they have to have a College of Business fair where programs and departments on campus can come and set up a booth and offer them jobs or let them know. So that was one of our biggest impacts, is that we had so many students that were required to come to this fair for their class. And then they came around and they had like a bingo sheet, like talk to 13 booths, and you give them a stamp. So we were interacting with students who still had no idea, going on our 4th year, that we had a varsity esports program. And a lot of them were engaged and wanting to participate, or even just wanting to come down to the facility to play in between classes. So I think that was one of the most impactful things, is being able to be a part of those college programming that we were able to attend, but then also setting up side events for our students specifically that aren't part of the program, where they could come into our facility and participate and play after hours and just have fun. Our welcome week is very impactful, where students are able to come play board games, they're able to come meet new people, and just kind of interact with our varsity players, who we ask them to attend just so that they can kind of interact with each other, but it's not required. Usually they do just because they want to meet other people. And then again, Smash events. Smash events are so big on our campus, working with the music department to kind of create a similar event where we could bring students and the community together. So I think trying to figure out what your community is really big on. Some schools are really big on Valorant or Rocket League, kind of hone into that, and then create an event specifically for your students so that they are able to have that kind of vibe and that experience without having the dedication and the commitment to a semester long varsity commitment.
So if I were to take that and dive down a little more into what you just said, what I'm hearing from you is that as an esports, coach and director, you're saying that your programming is not 100% esports events. What would you say is a healthy balance in terms of what you're trying to create and you're trying to achieve for your program, and visually with an awareness? Is there a healthy balance between these community neutral events that you're talking about, whether they're study hours or whether they're food nights or anything of that nature, and a come in and play in this structured tournament or game night that we are doing? Can you go a little more into that?
Yeah, depending on how many staff you have on, because if it's just yourself, I wouldn't get too heavy. I would maybe plan one a year or one a semester. If you have yourself and another full-time, or 3 to 4 student workers who are part-time, I would consider 2 a month, or one big one a semester, where you have a large. So we had a large Smash event where we collaborated with another department. That takes time to do the event, but it works for both semesters and it's large enough for the community. But then also smaller, either bi-weekly events that you can host if you have the capacity to do it. Don't try and do all of this by yourself if you're only one person. You're going to burn out, because with all the matches that you have, all of the practices, just everything you're trying to do as a head coach and a director, because those can be considered two different things. You need to figure out what your own bandwidth is before you try and add in the community aspect every month.
And if I could echo that, actually, I would also say,
Please,
like,
actually
be
add to
mindful of, be mindful of your how much your community things, because community is great, but look at your base level operations first. What's your day one operation? What has to happen day to day? What's obligations? And then you look at free time outside of that. It's very dangerous to say, yeah, I'll fit this thing in at night tonight, and I'll take tomorrow. I'll come in late tomorrow, and then you just won't, and then you'll end up working later and later and later continually, and people who program a lot of community things end up putting in like 80-hour weeks and not realizing it. And so do not just jump, well, I want to do 20 things this semester. No, settle in first, know what you want to do, and then go from there.
Absolutely. Chase, I'd like to actually extend this question to both you and to Cora. Within how the two of you operate, as you're both very community-minded people, what is the breakdown between I am hosting this thing for students and it is non-gaming related or is gaming light, and I am hosting this thing for students and it is esports related? What's that breakdown, if you will?
For us,
So
the community kind
go
of club
ahead
on
first.
campus is pretty light. Yeah, I know there's a delay here. For us, the community club on campus is pretty light, and esports already contains most of the gamers that would want to engage on campus for us, given how small we are. So what we do instead is do a lot of team building and kind of community stuff inside the team. Team dinners, hey, who wants to go to the dining center for this? We do boot camps and like after scrims and stuff. Hey, you want to get dinner? That kind of thing. Or win a big match, go grab ice cream, whatever. Just celebrating accomplishments and achievements with more community building things. But for specific non-esports community things, for me, it's really just making our building available to other departments on campus. Like athletics is doing some online testing form thingamahoozy what's it right now called impact testing, and they need a computer lab. I'm right here, and I'm in the same part of campus as they are. So that's how I get more exposure for our building and for our program without necessarily having to do a whole lot.
Yeah, so to piggyback on that, I would say that we host even in the past couple of months, because our arena was we opened it back at the very end of April, so it's only been open since the summer, and we hosted a couple of events on campus, esports related. North Star being our flagship Super Smash Brothers and fighting games event. That was our event. We hosted it, ran by our program, operated, everything was us. Versus we hosted the MNCS finals, which was the Minnesota Championship Series. They're one of the largest Rocket League grassroots communities actually in the country, and they hosted their finals on campus. We had our space open and available, and we were more opening up our space for them to come in and run the event, right? It was esports related though, in that regard. And then literally a week after, we hosted MNLC on campus, which is the Minnesota Learning Commerce. It's a massive group of educators that came to campus. There was probably 150 educators on campus, and we hosted a pre-event party. It was the first event in St. Cloud State's history to have alcohol, and our esports arena actually has a bar. And we got a license to sell alcohol at the event. Everyone was of age, of course, but it was so it was in the arena, and we did esports stuff, but they asked to throw up some videos or listen to some music, and we could obviously accommodate that. So I find now, when I was at my former university, there was a lot of development, I would say, that wasn't even esports related in how I engaged my students. We had professional development every Friday, and our spring boot camp was actually geared towards ensuring that you were ready for getting an internship over the summer or a job. So we had a lot of workshops, people doing resume building, cover letter building, website building, sometimes even some casting reels, production reels to prepare them for their career. So I see it as like a Venn diagram, right? So it's esports and what does everything touch? What are we involved with when it comes to esports, and how can we be affiliated in one, a way that makes sense, and two, a way that's meaningful? So it depends from place to place. At St. Cloud State now, since it's so new, everyone wants to do esports related stuff, and no
Yeah.
one knows that I just like playing ping pong. And I haven't had the ping pong club reach out to me to do something fun yet, right? So that's a bit of a challenge, I think, for any university that's starting. Your first year will probably be a lot of esports heavy things because everyone's excited, and you need to match that excitement. But eventually, as well, you should show your adaptability of your space and how you can utilize it for other really creative ideas.
Absolutely. Before I go into the nuts and bolts of further parts of programming, we talked about just the academic calendar. It would be inappropriate to gloss over the summer. And there's so many different things that programs are doing. In fact, many of you have done this magical sentence called summer camps. And so I'd like to start with you, Cora, and ask, how do you reach your students, whether they're part of IWU or not part of IWU? How do you reach them during this off season?
So summer camp for us is, well, twofold. So summer things for us, for our players, involves scrims for teams who are available. But a lot of my players, because of how heavily internship involved Wesleyan is with our 7th in nation job placement rate, our students scatter to the wind the second the summer hits. I had to find a place for our players to play while she was at an internship in Pittsburgh to play NECC Nationals. And I contacted schools and got that hooked up. So we do still play match in the summer, but also we have scrims happening for new teams. Our Overwatch team was scrimming throughout the summer and getting to know each other despite being across, I think, 5 time zones. Yeah, 5 time zones. One of them's in Anchorage. His ping was hilarious. So besides that, we also do summer camps for the local community. I actually have I have kids for the summer camps fly in from out of state to be in our camp. Because grandpa and grandma live in Bloomington, he lives in LA, he wants to be in our camp, and he's been a repeat camper for 3 years now. But our summer camps are geared towards middle schoolers for our camp specific things. And both myself and my coach Matt or assistant director have a lot of experience with summer camps given our experience in scouting. So camp is a very comfortable environment for us. And while it is still 30 middle schoolers screening my facility, there it's productive. We go through a lot of leadership and teamwork things. We do gaming blocks, of course. We do game skills. Matt and I taught Valorant and Rocket League again this year to help our students. I do engage some students as summer camp counselors for us. They're paid, of course, student worker employment wages, but they're camp counselors. And they say they don't like kids, and yet they have like a fan club by the end of it. So we have a full summer camp cadre. And something I added this year is I did a game-specific camp, because our camps are usually pretty broad and just general esports experience. But I also added a game-specific thing because in our first and second camp sessions, we saw this huge like desire to play Valorant. They would ignore most of the things we're trying to do and open up Valorant on the side, which was not great because I want to do things, but it let us do another Valorant camp, and I can do more of those things in the future of game-specific, coaching-specific, competitive-focused camps instead of just experience things. So if it's a multifaceted approach for us, it's not just players, for us, not just community, it's a mix.
Wonderful, thank you. Chase, Jackie, would either of you two like to add on to comments on summer programming, and in particular, how are you using it to reach students, whether they are existing students or perhaps future to be students?
I'll hop on before you say anything. So first, I think when you're thinking of trying to do a summer program, you need to start planning ahead of time. So ours ended in June, and hopefully now, even though I'm gone, they'll start planning it right at the beginning of September so that you can release all or most of your information by January, February, because that's when the YMCA releases all of their summer camps. That is when parents, I just found out, I tried to get my daughter into summer camps this summer and I realized that they all fill up in March, so I couldn't do that. She's only 4, so it's okay. But that's when parents are looking in by March, is to plan out their summer vacations. So make sure you're planning that. But then for Minnesota, we're lucky we have MMVL that the college directors and coaches can get an invite into to recruit, and then you could chat with their advisors for the high schools. And that's how I was able to reach the high school and middle school students throughout the summer. Is I've collaborated and made an entire Google Sheets of all the high schools within that, and not all of them have their information on there, so that's hard. But then just sending DMs, hey, here is our summer camp. Do you want to have your Rocket League teams come down and participate? So it was both middle school and high school over the month of June, and just being able to reach out to them through Twitter. So I highly recommend, if any high school directors or advisors, coordinators, make sure you have a Twitter presence or some way to get a hold of you, because that's still a gateway that I think we're all trying to push through.
Oh boy, summer programming. So I have very strong feelings on summer programming when it comes to esports, because I think it is a double-edged sword. It could be used to benefit your program, or and you'll come to find people in the space, everyone makes mistakes. It could hurt your program. And in my opinion, I think for this semester, our summer programming, we had a lot of accomplishments. We hosted 5 events on campus over the summer, and I mentioned a few of them. The Rocket League event, MNCS, North Star, the Super Smash Brothers Fighting Games event, as well as MNLC. Prior to both of our major events, we actually paired our camps with the events. So on the Friday, before North Star, the Friday before, we had a management camp, and we invited anyone that was participating in the management camp to shadow volunteer the next day for free. Meaning, so they would come in for the tournament, and if they were really interested in being a TO during the camp, they could shadow TOs and watch how they actually operate in person and how that works. Because as we know in esports, you really don't know if you want to do the thing until you do the thing. And so that was the whole point of the camp, is getting students involved and letting it be sort of a taste of what that looks like. So we hosted 5 events over the summer in total, and that was 300 people on campus. It was a huge accomplishment for us as a program. And school starts tomorrow, and I have nothing ready. I will be completely transparent with everyone on this call. Everything is taken the back burner to all of the summer events that we had and everything that we had to host. So if you're a new program, if you're starting a new program, even if you're an experienced director like me and you go somewhere else, take that first summer and plan. Right? If you want to do an event or two, that's totally fine. Don't do what I did. Don't do 5 events. It is not gonna help you when fall comes around. Unless if you're an expert planner and like Cora said earlier, you don't value
Which you
your
are.
work-life balance.
Work-life
I
balance
am,
for
but it was
cowards,
still
fine.
tough. Right, sure. But in that sense, I really think that when it comes to planning summer events, there's a lot of things that you can do right, and I'll say our summer events were all great, and I think we did an amazing job with our new teams that we brought in. We were able to do some stuff that we see at esports nationals. So like, for instance, our content team worked over the summer. That's a videographer, a graphic designer, a content manager, and an editor, and they actually were able to clip Smash preview highlights before the players play on stage. They take like a 5 to 6 second video, and they did that for North Star, and it usually takes Vince a couple of go-arounds before they're able to implement something of that caliber. So we had a lot of accolades, I would say, over the summer, but going into fall, it really kept pushing the planning back. So what I would say is it's important to not just plan your next 3 months. Project what you're going to be doing project wise. And, we always say plan ahead, plan ahead, plan ahead. But realistically, write a wish list of what you want to get done, and then start assigning how much time you think that it's going to take to do that. It's really going to help you out in the long run. As an example, so I'm going to track that moving forward, because what we're going to do moving forward, I think, is very different. There is no LAN centers in St. Cloud. Nowhere. You cannot go and rent or play a PC anywhere in St. Cloud. The closest that we have is a card shop downtown. So next summer, we're going to open up our arena to the local community. And I don't have any rates off the top of my head quite yet, but we're going to open it up for a very low rate for high school students and community members in the area to come in and use our facilities, and operate it like a LAN center. So it's custom fit to what your university needs are. A lot of universities are recruitment based, so obviously holding camps has a lot of weight to that. Opening up your space as a land center over the summer could have weight to it as well. There's a lot of opportunities for summer programming. Make sure it's meaningful, and piggybacking off what the other two said, coordinate with your local high school groups because they want to be in the know for stuff like that.
Good
I
luck.
think that was very appropriate to add in the asterisk on time management is definitely very important. Let's move on. I want to ask, and let's go now that we've established a good foundation in this conversation. Let's go a little bit deeper into what we might call the 102 of this discussion, and this is the red tape and bureaucracy that we all suffer,
Yay!
possibly when we are doing community programming. And I want to ask each and every one of you, and I'm going to start with Jackie for this one. How much freedom or restriction do you typically get when it comes to these types of programs for students? How often have you run into the phrase, it's not your job or it's not your department? How does that
I
impact
don't
you
think
and
I
what you try to
ever
do?
ran into it's not my job, it's not my department. It was more of what can I think of and how can I pay for it.
Yeah.
I actually I had it very nice. I had a very good working relationship with my boss, which is Mitch Wallerstead. And anytime that I thought of something or a new event that I wanted to do, I would just shoot him a message. Here's what I'm planning, and then we would collaborate the pros and cons of it. And I don't think there was a event that I thought of that we didn't do. So I don't have the red tape that a lot of people had. Our university was very pro esports and anything. There were a couple things, a couple lands that we couldn't go to, but that wasn't specifically red tape. It was due to it was over 400 miles, and we had to have more than one full-time faculty staff member that wasn't a student. I think that's where my red tape came in, is that we couldn't attend lands that we wanted to because we only had myself as full-time. I was in the process of planning an international tournament with Chase, still hoping to make it happen. But I was very fortunate that I didn't have a lot of pushback. So sorry.
You're fine. It happens.
Okay, I'll go for it
Oh,
then.
Chris is gone. Take it.
No,
Take it.
Chris. I can. Yeah, I'll do this. So essentially, with this sort of thing, red tape for us looks a lot like budgetary things. It's not no, you can't do this. It's can you fit it in your both budget and schedule? Because for me, I got to work out transportation, I got to work out housing, food, all that jazz. But I also have to make sure I have staff. Myself and my coach can only go so many weekends before we eventually collapse, and so we have to be mindful of how many weekends we can actually take to do events, and hey, does this fit in student schedules too? Because one of the red tapes that I had to deal with is there's some events I wanted to go to that students weren't available for. They had internships going on, they had family things, they already had this thing planned, and these kind of things get in the way, but it's also life. So the biggest red tape for me is honestly just budgetary, but also trying to handle just making sure students are able and able to do things that I want them to do. I also don't want to ask too much time of them. My whole goal is asking for 15 hours a week at most. If I'm asking for every weekend, that's kind of breaching how much I think is reasonable for them.
Yeah, I think that highlight of how much time one can spend is really important. You know, one weekend is okay, every weekend probably not so much. Chase, on to you.
Yeah, when I've found whenever you are looking at new jobs, right? We see and I bring this up because there are an overwhelming amount of coaches and directors that look for employment elsewhere, whether it be in the space or out of the space, after their first couple of years doing it. And so I bring this up. This is questions you should ask when you get to your university, right? You know these questions to ask in the sense of what are my responsibilities, what are my expectations, and what am I capable of doing, right? What can I reach out and do? What departments can I touch and collaborate with? And so on the restriction side of things, when I was at my former university, it was restrictions galore. I was told all the time, that's not your job. Don't tell them how to do their jobs. I had a very The biggest example being we had won multiple championships back to back and had come up in nationals, shy short, just one map away of winning nationals. It was a 4-hour long Overwatch set, and we were exhausted. And a week later, the athletics department put out a write-up of the semester review for all of athletics, and not one of our players was included in that write-up, even after winning awards and being considered as All-Americans in a couple of different conferences. And it is frustrating, right, to put that much work into a program, whether it's on the coach's side, on the director's side, on the student side, and not see that engagement reciprocated from the university. So keep door knocking is what I have to people that have a lot of restrictions. That's would be my piece of advice, is just keep knocking on that door. For freedoms, when I moved here to St. Cloud State, that was part of why I wanted to move here, because it was a very collaborative opportunity. I honestly have more freedom than what I know what to do with, in the sense of I have departments all across campus wanting to work with us. And at this point, I'm like, how do I work with everyone? Because there's so much going on. And it's a good problem to have, in my opinion. So, in terms of freedoms
Minnesota,
here,
where it's at.
Minnesota, where it's at. Exactly. So, in terms of like freedom, you can really gauge that, I think, from your initial conversations. I mean, bring it up in your final round interview and ask them if they're considering hiring an assistant director or full-time coaches. And based on that response of how much they're willing to invest into the program, that's going to be a measure of how much you're going to invest your time into the program based on what they're doing. So, I think that it's something you learn with experience, but I've had a lot more freedom now because I recognized my prior restrictions and moved in that direction.
Yeah, I'm gonna move to another question, but I think that what you brought up, Chase, is a perfect segue to this question. I'm going to start with Jackie on this one. How have each of you measured success in your program? Because within the worlds of university and academia, we are measured by outcomes, and they may not be what our peers or cohorts or those looking from the outside may think. So let's talk about measurements of success and how your peers and colleagues have measured those programs, and how you're asked to report these community programming events back to your university.
I think growth is one of the number one measures of success. Starting off with, because our university is at the size it is, so with 16,000 students, starting off with only 1 to 2 teams, and then growing to our second year, we had I think 8 or 10 teams, which was a little much for us. But just that growth between our first and second year, I think that's a measure of success. But then also, we're education first. So continuing having students who are progressing through their education and graduating. I think it's really important that our students are able to attend our university and get a degree, and they're not wasting money, because we don't offer scholarships unless it's financial. So it's really important that if a student is here, that they're not wasting time just to play. And so my perspective on it is probably vastly different than other people, but that's fine. But that's how we measure our success, is our students are progressing while being able to play. We have students who are getting experience within our program who want to work in esports after. So I think that's another measure of success, is getting them the experience that they need to move on after they graduated. I just had a reference review today or yesterday, I can't remember, for one of my students for a director job. And I think that shows that he has the ability to move from graduating into this position because of the experience he has. So I think those are the measures of success that I personally look at.
Chase or Corey, you want to go next?
I'll go next. I'm gonna take
Thank
it
you,
from
Chase.
Cora this time. So once again, this is so interesting for me as a question, because it varies based on where I was, and I'll talk about where I'm at St. Cloud State in the sense of measuring our programming. And I'll say, as a base, to echo off of what Jackie said, My number one goal with anyone coming into my program at any university I'm at is to help them achieve their goals, which is generally, if they're coming to college, to get a full time job and start their career. So at the end of the day, no matter what, all of the tickers move in that direction. That is the end goal, end result for everything we do. So that's my internal measurement, I would say, of success for my program. I am very proud, and as most directors are, to talk about my students that move on in the space and end up working in esports, or even working in an affiliated career, unaffiliated career, but esports being the vehicle that helped get them there. How we measure success at St. Cloud State right now in terms of our programming is very easy, and that is numbers of bodies that attended the event. That's because we're a new program, right? Campus is still seeing what the involvement looks like and how engaged the student and campus population, including faculty and staff as a whole, are. So when we held our esports launch event for our esports arena back in April, we saw 200 people on campus come out for that event, both students, staff, club leaders, Mitchell Hall community residents. It was across the board. So that would be our main measurement of success, I would say, by our administrators and peers, is how many people came out. The secondary being the obvious, which is the quality of life of the event. How much of a good time did they have? Was it easy to understand? Were there people guiding them through what was going on? I think that those are our biggest measurements right now for programming.
Gotcha.
And then I would echo that myself with especially attendance is kind of a big one. Bodies and seats is how a lot of things are measured on campus. But then looking at an overall campus perspective of how a program is measured in success, it is number of events as well as attendance. If I do one event with okay attendance, great. But looking at the stats in our annual reports, like we have departments running events daily. If it's student involvement, who do things with hundreds of students every time. So as a program, you look at number of events you do and then quality of events. If I get 100 people there, but they kind of hate it, not much of a point. And so like whenever we do big efforts like our big tournament, Poor Pummel, we did partner with the F4. The student population was happy, the administration was happy because it was done seriously. There's a serious effort being put into it, and it was being taken with the correct level of interest from staff and students as well.
I'm gonna hop on really quick too, because I always forget stuff. But Chase, you were just saying before that you're creating your LAN center for the summer. I think that's a measure of success that you're gonna have next year for your university to show the amount of PCs are needed with the amount of community and high school students that use it. You're going to be able to show your university that it's needed for your community. And I think that's a measure of success that we can all attest to. For our students want to play in our facility, and a lot of them aren't big enough, so we need bigger ones. So being able to show that your facility is constantly in use, is constantly needed more PCs or bigger space updated, I think that's also a measure of success.
I should have clarified as well, and I also forgot something, Jackie, which is the number of people attending your event. It is that number is so important for us because that number affects everything else. It waterfalls from there. So we use Power BI, which takes metrics and analytics from those numbers. So it'll track how many people, if someone has showed up to 4 esports events over the semester, it'll track their engagement as an esports member, because they're not just going to one-off esports events and then not being engaged from there. They're attending Overwatch tryouts and our Rocket League finals and all of these other events. So it gives campus a great metric and measurement of who is part of our esports community versus who are friends of people that are in the esports community.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to bring up. We're in our last 10 minutes of this, so I'm going to go to 2 final questions, and these are both going to be round table unless we see any wonderful questions in the Twitch chat. So if you have any questions that are burning in regards to community and programming, please drop them in here. Otherwise, I think there have been a number of knowledge bombs that have been dropped already, and I want to keep that train coming. Let's talk about high school. We've touched on it a little bit throughout this hour. please define for ourselves and for the audience the importance to you in terms of interacting with and reaching high schools directly or through third parties, however you choose to do so. And what are some of those short examples on how to authentically connect with these institutions?
I'll start. I love the third party platforms that I have used, but I personally like better to reach out phone, email, or Discord to my local high schools to set up a phone call with them or a Zoom or a Discord call with them personally and then with their schools. I think you're going to get a much better or a much better connection with them and communicate, one, what your program offers, two, how you can collaborate with the high schools. I think the high schools are still so scared to, especially just in our area. I don't know if it's something in Minnesota, but I feel like the high schools just aren't aware or know that they can come to the local school, the local colleges to come play at. And we've all said it that we want to make room for them. We want them to come play their finals. We want them to come watch our teams. And that's how we're going to get those recruitments to come through, but also just showing that we're there for the community. And so that's what I try to work on, is personally inviting the schools to come down. In Minnesota, obviously we're like a long state, but Mankato's in a weird spot. We don't have as many local high schools compared to Minneapolis or St. Cloud. So trying to get people to travel down, it's a little bit harder. You have to give them incentive. How many hours are they going to be there? If it's for a half an hour, it's not going to be worth it. It's going to be hours where we're providing them some nice little swag or a pizza party, giving them opportunities to play on our PCs. I think that's something that they'll want to come down. Our longest trip, I think, was 3.5 hours. We had someone at the very top of the state drove down to use our facility.
Wow. I can kind of speak next then, because I bring I bring a really weird perspective because I'm formerly a teacher. I ran a high school team for 3 years, and now I've been at Wesleyan for going on my 3rd school year. So I have that perspective of when I was a high school teacher, I was banging down doors, yelling at coaches, please come do recruiting visits for us. I think Chase is one of those, actually. Yes, yeah, it was actually Chase. I was like, there's coaches who I met when I came to the industry in collegiate who were like, didn't I meet you 2 years ago when you were at my school? I'm like, yeah, you came to my school and tried to get my students. So as a high school teacher, I would bang down coaches' doors if I had the opportunity, because some state leagues are really developed. Get hooked up with your state league. Not play versus, not HSCL. Get hooked up with your teacher-run state league. IHSCA is Illinois. IEF is Indiana. MNVL is wonderful in Minnesota. I think you both have seen them before. There's WISA is Austin, Wisconsin. They're hosting their state finals on December 2nd. I'm going to that. Michigan's wonderful. And like, for some reason, Midwest is packed full of high school leagues. I think every big high school league besides Texas is Midwest. So
TechSF.
Yeah, TechSF is wonderful. I love Danielle and the whole crew over there. But like, lean on your state leagues. And if they don't have one, consider contributing or being a part of one. Also, I'll get yelled at if I don't mention MoSAF in Missouri. Sorry. But like, talk to your state leagues, get hooked up with them, and they can point you to schools who have directors who are sympathetic to your cause. If you talk more about culture versus competitive success, that does tend to win over a lot of teachers. Because something I was very wary of. Yes, go ahead.
So, as part of the high school league before, did you have a list of high schools and advisors that you could send to those colleges? Because I feel like that's one of the biggest gateways that I found is, like, we want the student information, but of course, student data privacy. But then we want there's that third party, which is usually the high school advisor. And sometimes they don't have that whole list. And like, you just have to go get it yourself. It's like, oh, that's hours of work, which I don't mind doing, but not everyone has their information out there.
So that's a 2-part answer. First part of that is, if you represent a university, state leagues will happily give you contact info for coaches and directors at programs. If you are a third party who is not educationally relevant, we've been approached by companies before that some random company, hey, can we have our student database for free? I'm like, no, F off. And so you need to find, if you're an educator, you'll be treated like an educator. If you're not, you'll be treated like an outsider, because teachers are very, very, very protective of their students. And I actually did steer some students away from several universities who reached out to me for recruiting because they were not good places. It was either the school was academically very poor, did not fit them, they were trying to get easy money for college, or I knew that that program would not be a good fit for them personally. So talk to teachers first, and they'll steer you still up better.
So my answer actually goes off of Cora's answer. My answer will be short and sweet. And this is the best recruitment, even engagement tactic that I've ever used, and it's reaped the best results, both for students that didn't decide to go to our program and students who did. And that is, there's one thing that we have differently than any other thing out there, right? Any other sports team, any other engagement, and that is we can play online. So as long as it's okay with the high school coaches, get their students in scrims and in practices with your students. Let them hear it from a student perspective. Let them engage with the people whose team they're likely going to be on, and let your students help you engage the students you're looking to bring in, because that is the culture. It's not just preaching culture, it's showing culture. And by showing that
Yeah.
culture and engaging those students, they're going to know whether or not they're a good fit on the team before they get to campus. And I've went to recruit amazing students who I in my mind thought would be an amazing fit for what we were doing, and they didn't mesh well with the team. And that was fine. I pointed them to a college that I felt would be a great they would thrive in and they would have great success in. So that's the other thing. If you're recruiting for numbers, don't recruit for quality, and not just quality of who you might think, but quality that makes sense for your program and for your team that's already there.
Thank you all so much. We've got just a couple more minutes left. And in these last minutes, I'm going to give each of you 1 minute. And I want you to speed run this for you. To summarize this conversation that we've been having today, and for those who will be listening this to follow, please give out a piece of advice. What is the first thing that you should recommend fellow coaches and directors prioritize when it comes to building programming like that, what we have talked today? 60 seconds, each of you. I'm going to start with Jackie. Chase, you're going to be last because I know you're going to need to be concise.
I'm gonna be blunt and just say you need to start your planning probably half a year, if not more, a year in advance. Even if it's just collaborating with a committee, getting 4 to 5 people together, you need that time to plan. Do not try and create an event that's a week later, a month later, that it won't be as successful as you want it to be, because there are so many factors. Start planning at least 6 months to a year in advance.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Cora, go.
For on my perspective, like if you want your events to appear genuinely well intentioned, you have to be genuinely well intentioned. Especially in the collegiate space and in the academic space, people can sniff out someone who is not the right fit for what they're trying to do. If I try to appear one way that I'm not, you're not going to get across for that. So, doing programming for diverse groups on campus or for groups you don't know much about, if you appear unenthusiastic, that will seep through in the event. If you want to appear enthusiastic, be enthusiastic, and if you want to appear like you care, actually care.
Well said.
We don't run our events by ourselves. We don't, right? Pull them behind the curtain. It's not just us running the show, it's our students. It's our staff that are engaged. Make sure they are prepared for your event, more so than anyone else. They need to be prepared. So my biggest piece of recommendation, or biggest piece of advice, biggest recommendation would be to have a boot camp at the beginning of your semester, so that your staff and students are aware of the expectations and how you're going to engage your local community, both on your campus and off your campus, and prep them for those conversations. Because an interested parent isn't always going to approach you. You're going to be off running, doing something, someone spilled something on a PC and you're fixing it. They're going to talk to the student that's standing there, and make sure that student is well equipped for that conversation.
Well, thank you all so much for that wonderful insight. And I want to thank everyone who's been watching for today and for those who have tuned in for the past 3 days for the Coaches and Directors Summit. This is aptly timed as we begin a new school year. We welcome everybody back to a fall semester and to all the excitement and the stress and the magic that comes with a new year, new us, new programs, new students, new activities. And I hope that everyone that has been listening has learned something a little bit newer. And for those that are here and to our panelists as well, I encourage and invite everyone to hop into the EsportsU Discord tonight, following right here now on the hour, if you're available, and have a chance to talk with some of our panelists that we've had over the past couple of days and ask some questions, just hang out and get to know the other members of your community. Thank you all so much for attending the Coaches and Directors Summit 2023. It has been such a joy and a pleasure. Till next time, friends.